Connell, can you cut taxes, grow the economy enough, and pay down the deficit?
Technically, yes. I mean, I think this will be one of the things that actually will be our job to ask tough questions as we go on, because we're in, to the extent that we can have a press honeymoon with Donald Trump, we're in it now, in that we're looking at this and saying these are, and that's one of the reasons, as you know, the market's been up, business-friendly policies that are going to be put in place. But you think about it, he's trying to do both at the same time, have lower taxes and on certain areas have more spending, especially infrastructure spending. So there's going to be some part of this that has devil in the detail components to it. But the short answer to your question is, yeah, it can be done. I'll be interested to see whether or not, quote unquote, rich people really do net get a tax cut out of this, or when you get rid of all the deductions and the like, are they paying a similar rate to what they're paying now? I don't know, but a lot of questions still, I think.
The theory being that you're going to grow the economy and you'll be able to hopefully grow it fast enough that you would take in more revenue, and it's sort of classic Econ 101, but it's a chance now for the country to see whether or not the policies can really start to play out in a meaningful way that add to our overall economic growth. You know, the fear in all this, and this is what the bears worry about right now, is that with all this spending, Lauren, interest rates, and you got a Fed that's increasingly aggressive, the interest rates are going to go up faster perhaps than anyone thinks, and they're fearful of that.
Let's say they go up a quarter point each of the 3 predicted rate hikes in 2017. They're still historically relatively low. If we get this drastic tax cut, and Steve Mnuchin, the nominee for Treasury Secretary, said this is going to be the biggest and widest tax cut since Ronald Reagan. If we get that, and regular consumers, especially lower income Americans who would use that tax savings on the economy, and even the richer, Americans out there who would then feel confident to spend that money on their businesses, creating jobs, you would have this massive spending that could absolutely take this economy, which has grown, by the way, 1.8% on average. That's GDP under the 8 years of Obama. Then you take off the red tape, and we can see huge potential, which we're craving.
I think it's growth at all costs, don't you, to some extent? I mean, I think that's the priority for this administration, is that, there'll be questions, as I mentioned a moment ago, brought up about how we pay for this. But at least initially, for all the talk about everything else in the campaign, if Donald Trump can come back in a year or 2 years and say, hey, listen, this was, as Lauren said, this was the growth then, this is the growth now,
I can just see
win.
it. He's going to be like, do you see this GDP number? Right. Everybody's going to know what a GDP number is. Do you see how much we're growing? I mean,
exactly
1.8%. That was all we grew on an annualized basis for the last 8 years.
And we got
That's not hard to beat.
On top of that, which is a tax hike for everybody. So it's been tough.
Let's talk about the stock market. Connell, the stock market, as Chris Toomey pointed out at the top of the show, has clearly reflected the fact that they expect the economic growth to print, 3.5%, 4% sometime in 2017, that interest rates will continue to remain low, and that the regulatory environment is going to be such that all of these companies are going to be able to go out and hire. Is the stock market ahead of itself?
It could be. I mean, I think there's definitely a chance that it is, and we won't know the answer to that. You've been doing this for a long time until it's maybe too late for some people. And, we've been asking it for this run up and this hovering around Dow 20,000. And you're getting opinions on all sides of that. I think there is a reasonable argument, though, that things have shifted to an environment that is more business friendly. That, remember, it's a stock market that's done pretty well under President Obama. Right. So what's the next step there? A change that can continue. And the next I was going to say, Tricia, says change in environment that allows the growth not only to continue but perhaps to be even stronger growth than what we've seen.
We all hope so. The interesting thing as well, and I just have to point this out, you saw him this week, of course, in Mar-a-Lago, meeting with the CEOs of Boeing and Lockheed Martin, and he's got what he hopes, I guess, is going to be a bidding war now for the F-35 program, saying, I'm going to give the other guy a shot because it's $400 billion, which is an insane amount of money, to put it in perspective. That's half Obama's stimulus plan. So this is a guy that's going in there, and I can't remember when we last had a president that said we need to get costs down. This is important, right? Because when we talk about the infrastructure spend, people worry that he's just going to spend money willy-nilly, and you have to hope there's some discipline there. We're certainly seeing some evidence of some discipline when it comes to Boeing and Lockheed Martin.
I think he's a deal maker by nature, right? The art of the deal. So he will do these negotiations with everybody that he needs to. And he also has an ego. He wants to go down as a good president. You've been on the floor of the stock exchange all week, Connell.
Yes.
There's an energy there. We're seeing resistance around 20,000. I know the stock market's the last couple of days, not going up and up. But there's this energy that we haven't seen in a while. I've also been reading that we're buying more Christmas trees. We're saying Merry Christmas. We're having holiday parties again. Donald Trump has ignited something in America that we haven't seen
well, that's why I think,
in a long time.
To my point about him being big picture, I think that's why he just cares about growth first and everything else, not even second or third, everything else way down the line. That we'll worry about everything else afterwards, because if he can come back and make that argument, you're right, Trish, right. Hold up the piece of paper and say, here's the growth when I started and here it is now, I win. That is going to be his economic argument.
Yeah, and ego plays into that.
But that's why we have to ask the questions. I mean, how do you pay for it? I mean, how do you get it through Congress? There are important questions in there that shouldn't get lost.
And remember, as a long-term investor myself and somebody who advised billions of dollars for many years, growth is great,
right?
But you got to remember how you actually get the growth.
Yeah, I think that's my point.
And if we get to the point where it's just about government spending and government infrastructure projects, I think the stock market is going to be looking at that in a very concerned way. And so I think it's important that people remember that. It's good, it's great. The animal spirits are fantastic. The excitement, the Christmas trees, the parties. It's no longer, you're not demonized to be a banker. However, we have to remember.
Just a journalist.
Well, that's going to always continue. But growth is great, but you've got to be able to pay for it.
And his cabinet. It's all hands-on experience. If you look at the wealth, $4.5 billion, that's how much his cabinet is worth. These are people who know what they're doing. They're not academics. And sometimes that's a little bit more useful for getting the wheels turning.
Well, we know that Lauren likes the fact. We know that Lauren likes the fact that billionaires are in the cabinet.
Yeah. Christmas trees. She likes Christmas trees.
I like Christmas trees as well.
Lauren, Connell, thanks very much.
Guys,
thanks for joining us.